Coming to you from the corporate headquarters of MalaceHR in Troy, Michigan, welcome to the Malace Cast, the official podcast of MalaceHR.
All right.
Sorry.
All right, welcome back to the Malace Cast, the official podcast of MalaceHR. I'm LJ.
I'm Sarah.
And we've got a lot to talk to you about today, but before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe on this video, as well as check out our pages on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So, today we have got a nice discussion about personality.
Yay.
Sarah, you've got a personality, right? If I remember. Well, what I really want to talk about today is how different personalities work together or don't work together in an office setting. You know, and I think we've all been in situations or where we're with coworkers or just even customers or clients where the two personalities that you're dealing with, yourself and their personality, are kind of polar opposites on opposite sides of the spectrum. And if you know how to deal with somebody who has a different personality than yourself, you can be successful. But if you don't know how to deal with that person, things can get pretty toxic and go downhill pretty quickly. So today we're going to cover a lot of different things about personality, and I'd like to go through the DISC personality assessment. It's something that we give all of our employees and the different styles that people have. But when we're looking at different personality types, I really can kind of break it down into two different groups. You've got really extroverts and introverts. And I think if you've got a lot of them working together in synergy and they're able to understand each other, you're gonna be successful. But if not, then obviously it's not gonna work out. What type of experiences have you had in the workplace with introverts or extroverts, and what do you consider yourself? I mean, I know I'm an extrovert, like 100%. Like, yes, you are. But you kind of have qualities of both, I would say.
Yeah, I will quietly stand up and raise my hand for all the introverts who don't want to be acknowledged. No, I think there's a common misconception that introvert means bad, and I don't think that's fair because I think introverts bring a lot to the table in different ways. Typically, very cerebral people. Just because we're not loud and boisterous doesn't mean that we're not involved and engaged and things like that. Right. A lot of people meet me and then they find out I'm an introvert and they're like, no, but really it comes back to how you absorb your energy. You're the kind of person who absorbs your energy by center of attention and let's have fun and all those things, where I absorb energy by quiet, downtime, chill, alone time. So, I mean, you can break that down into a million different ways, but ultimately you've got to have the extroverts and you've got to have the introverts to make a successful company. And when you expand on that and you look into like the DISC personality types or Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, so on and so forth, you really get a feel for how people break things down and process them. So just because somebody like me prefers to be alone doesn't mean we don't like people. Doesn't mean we're antisocial. We just prefer to be by ourselves. Whereas we look at you guys who it's like, how can you stand that many people around all the time? But you thrive on it.
Yeah, I'm like the sun. I'm just radiating energy at all times.
You are.
You know, but obviously, just in talking with you even before this podcast and working with you, I know you've had experience with, a few different types of personality tests, the Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs, and now we're going to really be talking about the DISC today. I've always thought they were pretty beneficial for an organization. What are your thoughts? Do you think, as far as from an organizational standpoint or a personal standpoint, what do you think they're more beneficial to, the company or the person themselves?
The person themselves, because at least in my experience, when I started finding my types in the various personality profiles, I was able to like latch onto it. Like, oh man, this is, I've always thought I was weird because I'm not like I'm supposed to be. I'm not a Capricorn. I'm not an only child, like with all those stereotypes. But when you break down these personality types that are based in scientific research, then it's like, oh, this makes total sense why I act like I act. So I think it starts with figuring it out for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then it expands by saying, hey, he's different, but he's okay. Or, hey, she's completely opposite of me, but we get along this way. So I don't think that there's a bad way to look at it. I just think it's best when it starts with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think that allows you to kind of recognize any sort of strengths and also weaknesses of areas that you can improve. But kind of going back to your point, there really is no bad personality type, because every different personality is going to be needed in the organization at some point. So to kind of go through the DISC personalities, all right, the DISCs are broken down. You've got D's, I's, S, and C's. Now, D stands for dominance. These people are the driver of an organization. I is for influence, and that's kind of the influencer, obviously. S is for steadiness. This is the person who's going to be kind of that support person. And then you have conscientiousness, which is C, and this is like the analyst. So kind of just going over the D's. I think we all know a D in our lives. Yes. These people are direct. They're to the point. Some of their biggest fears, I think, are a lack of control of a situation. Yep. When things get out of their hands, they start to get, a little flustered, frustrated, and maybe even a little confrontational.
Yeah.
And I think that also goes into their weakness. Their fear turns into their weakness, which is that confrontational, argumentative types.
And losing control.
Mm-hmm. So, and for all of our listeners, an example of a D, and I'll give you a couple here because I got them all written down. So an example of a D in the real world would be The Rock.
Yeah.
It would be Robert De Niro. It would be Donald Trump. He's a huge D. A guy can't stop talking. But I always look at The Rock because you look at The Rock and this guy. I mean, he's on Instagram like every 15 minutes, and he's like just got done doing 400 sit-ups and a million push-ups, and can't wait for this afternoon's workout. Like, this guy is driven, goal-oriented. I mean, when he enters a room, he has a presence about him. What are your thoughts as far as D's? Have you had positive and negative experiences with D's? Because I think we've all kind of had a little bit of both depending on the person.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's always healthy D's and unhealthy D's. Right. The people who are very aware of who they are and what their crap is that they're bringing to the table, but they also are unapologetic because they're a D and they're okay with it. So I think we have a few D's that work here that they keep it rolling. I mean, where would we be? I would probably both have the same people in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Where would we be if they weren't the ones that are driving us? Yeah. Because you can't, as we go through the DISC personalities, you can't be all one of any of them in order to be successful. So, but they are definitely the drivers in the industry. They're the outgoing, outspoken ones. And they're the ones who are usually the most stubborn in my experience. But you need that. So it's all good. It's just how well do you deal with being driven and pushed and nudged and tapped on the shoulder every 5 seconds to get an answer about something. Because some personality types don't like that at all.
Well, and like you said, you're an introvert. So, a D, which is definitely an extroverted, definitely kind of in your face type person, that might not work well with somebody who's more of an introvert or to themselves. And I think that's where the other personality types come into play, but also having, just a semblance of self-awareness to recognize that, hey, the person I'm talking to has a different style, a different way of thinking than me. But, when you think of a D, it's usually your CEO, your CFO, those types of people. Yeah. So then the next letter, I, this, like I said, this is for influence. This is the influencer. Now, some people or some celebrities, I guess, that would be I's are Oprah, Jim Carrey, Bill Clinton. These people are outgoing, enthusiastic. They're high-spirited, a little impulsive. And I think we all saw that when Oprah just decided to give everybody cars and stuff. Like, if that was impulsivity, I don't know what is, And these people, when you're working with an I, excuse me, let me give it notes. They really are focused on that bonding and rapport and developing those relationships. So you don't want to be direct or straight to the point with an I. You really want to, be friendly, and you want to approach them in a way that gives them an opportunity to express their thoughts entirely. And I think
to shine like the sun.
And to shine like the sun. Yes. Yes, but to shine like the sun, 100%. Their biggest fear, though, for the I's is rejection. So this is why it can be tough when we talk about D's wanting to be kind of confrontational or direct. I's, they don't necessarily want to be, told no, or that their idea isn't isn't good, you know, and they want acceptance within groups and within the company. So they're going to do everything they can to try to express themselves, but also make sure that their ideas are accepted by the group, you know. And you know, I think their biggest weaknesses, and because I'm an I, I'm the highest I you could ever come up with and see, and I think the biggest weakness for me, organization. You know, I have a hard time keeping organized. I've got stuff everywhere. And then also, you know, dealing with super detailed oriented stuff. You know, I'm a big picture guy. You know, I like having a vision. I like understanding what we need to do. But when it gets to the nitty gritty, you know, that's when a D or one of these other personality types needs to come in and fill that void. Right. As far as eyes, you know, what do you see typically in an environment? What type of roles would you think an eye would be good for at a company?
Well, it's funny you should mention that because we happen to have a wonderful social media director and marketing fella that is a high eye and is standing behind our camera right now. Right. I wish you guys knew Andrew because, one, that makes you well aware of the studio that I sit in with these two very energetic, extroverted eye folks. But he is sunshine. You guys are both very sunshine folks. Yeah,
I'm blinded every time I look at him.
I know, he's just so precious.
Oh my God. You're too kind.
But, you know, sometimes that's exhausting too. I love you guys very much, but sometimes it's a lot.
Right. Well, and I think Andrew is in a perfect role for that as a marketing, head of our marketing department, and I'm in sales. So, but at the same time, like you said, and that's a great point. You know, it can get a little much, and that's part of being. And an eye has to understand. Okay, turn it down. Excuse me, time to turn it down a few notches, because not everybody is as receptive to that outgoing energy all the time. But it's all about self-awareness and being able to identify those things. I'm being very eye-ish right now.
You both are.
Oh my God. I love it.
So now moving on to S of our disc, and the S, like I said earlier, is steadiness, the supporters. So these types of people are they avoid confrontation, and they really enjoy once they get something in place, you know, an agenda, a schedule, a process in place. They're not too keen on changing it. So when it comes to things changing, whether it's a new policy or anything in the workplace that isn't the status quo to what they're used to, they start to get uncomfortable. And their biggest fear obviously is change, and their weakness is having trouble facing issues head on, you know, because they don't want to be confrontational, you know. So they're more of somebody who probably, they don't like a policy goes into effect. They probably won't tell anybody, but they're going to, like, you know, have a grudge list essentially, you know, like what was it in Billy Madison or whatever, where he calls the guy and he crosses his name out in lipstick, you know, that probably that type of person, but not all of them. So yeah, those types of people. But once again, you need these supporters because they're the people that make the entire process go. So when we put something into place, you know, they're the ones that are out there ensuring that it works according to plan, and you can always count on them because they're not changing anything, you know. What are your thoughts on S's? Are you friends with any S's? Do you know any S's?
So I test as an S-ish. Yeah, okay. Right around there.
Get a little bit of an S out of you.
But listening to kind of what you're saying, it actually makes sense because I'm the steady one and I'm the one who implements the things and keeps things organized for you while you're out there being an I. So it does make sense how we balance each other in that regard.
Right.
I'm definitely, for me personally, I'm the steadiness for sure. I don't think I'm too stubborn to change.
Right.
Because I understand that in order for the company to grow and everybody to get better, we need change. So maybe I'm a little bit healthier on that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I am definitely the one who is sticking up for folks. Like, I'm the protector. That's always been kind of my way. Right. So that all factors in too. So again, one of those things like balancing each other out with it.
Yeah. And I mean, and so in your typical S, they're going to be even tempered. They're going to be humble, patient. Some celebrity examples of an S would be Martin Luther King Jr., Tom Hanks, Jimmy Fallon, David Beckham. These are all kind of your S examples. So, and then moving on to our final letter, C, conscientiousness. I think, conscientiousness. You nailed it. There you go. Anyways, these people, now these are your detail people. Okay. These are the analysts. Okay. These are your number people. I think everybody knows a C somewhere. They are the people that are on their computers, in their spreadsheets, are dealing with numbers nonstop, and they're usually quiet. Okay. They usually kind of keep to themselves, but they are extremely important in an organization. And this might be somebody that is in, an accounting type role, or maybe some sort of programming role. Payroll. Exactly. And if you're dealing with a C, you need to use precise numbers, details, facts. That is how they operate. If you start talking in broad strokes, and using all these generalizations about what you're doing, that doesn't work for them. It just simply does not work for them. They need to know the exact details. And part of that goes to their biggest fear. Now, their biggest fear is not being right, is not being accurate. So to them, they need to have the details, because the last thing they want is to be in a meeting or some sort of presentation and get something wrong. And their biggest weakness, another person where they avoid conflicts, and they repress, maybe negative concerns or feelings that they're having, which, these people, they don't mention it. They don't like how something's going. They don't mention it, and it kind of just boils over a little bit, But, overall, C's are analytical, they're reserved, they're precise. Some celebrity examples, would be Bill Gates, Albert Einstein, Warren Buffett. So if you think about those types of people, that falls right in line with a C. As far as C's go, I mean, I think when you're looking at these different personality types, typically the D's and the C's, the direct people and the C's always clash, and having an organization where you can have a D's effectively work with the C, the direct person to the numbers person, that's where you're going to be successful. Have you experienced, what type of experiences, I guess, have you had with C's,
C's, there's actually another gentleman in our company that does the exact same job that I do, and he's got to be a C.
Oh yeah.
And he's so organized. I take so many cues from the things that he does, because I feel I'm a pretty organized person, and then I look at his stuff and I was like, oh, well, I guess I could be doing all this way better. So yeah, I think he's great. I think we do have some folks in our accounting department that are very, very much C's, and this ship would not run without them being able to sit down and focus like they do when there's a bunch of eyes fluttering around like you too.
Right.
So they're the merit to them. They're like the quiet winners,
Right,
so,
right, yeah.
Like the D's and the I's are going to let you know they won.
Yeah, we've got like a gong for the I's.
Yes,
if the I's are successful, you go hit the gong.
Yes.
That wouldn't be a C though.
No, and I think it kind of, going back to the introvert extrovert, it sounds, generalizing, obviously, that like kind of the D's and the I's are more the extrovert, and then the C's and the S's are more the introvert personality types.
Right.
So, I mean, again, it all kind of folds together. And when you do take the DISC exam, for anybody who hasn't or is interested in it, you fall somewhere on the spectrum. So rarely are you a high I where you're nothing but an I. You're somewhere like an I close to an S or so on.
Right.
So I think being able to kind of pull the different, the good and the bad out of the personality types that you're closest to is what's going to make you the most successful.
Yeah.
And also understanding, if somebody is a D and you're a C, there's a whole way to communicate with them.
Right.
And then so us being able to use that here to kind of recognize, okay, well, this is how I typically communicate. How do you like to be communicated with? Or even talking to clients and customers, things like that. Some of them, they don't want you to call them every day. They don't want to hear from you every day because they're busy. And other ones are like, you haven't called me in 2 days. I don't have a reason to call you. So, how do they need their attention? what works best for them. I mean, candidates that we talk to, sometimes you'll call them, and they won't get back to you, and you send them a text and they answer right away. And it's like, okay, so that's how you want to be communicated with. That's fine.
Yeah.
So finding out how to effectively communicate with the different types is probably the most successful thing that we do as a company.
Right. And I think it translates not just in a professional setting, but a personal setting as well. I mean, if you're doing things, whether it's getting stuff done on your house and getting work done, or you're working in or you're dealing with a like a community group, maybe a church group or some sort of community outreach group or whatever, you're going to be dealing with a lot of different people, and being able to understand that and assimilate, I guess, to their style is going to be the greatest thing you can do. But I think it goes back to communication in general is the number one thing you really need to focus on. And I tell everybody this is like, you might not be the Albert Einstein, the smartest person in the world. I'm certainly not. But if you can communicate effectively and articulate, your thoughts and emotions to people, you will be successful in one way or another. It's because that's a difficult thing. I mean, you think about, I think the greatest fear in the country is, I think, public speaking. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was growing up, I had trouble public speaking, and I wanted to be a politician. Don't want to be a politician anymore, but I did when I was a kid, also wanted to dig up dinosaurs, which we've discussed.
We've covered.
Yeah. I was a dinosaur digging politician. Getting the T-Rex vote. But anyways, I just had this thing in my head that's what I wanted to do.
It's a great dream.
It was a great dream. Yeah. It died very quickly. But doing that, because I wasn't a super good public speaker, man, every time I was in class or every time I was in a situation where they needed to volunteer to read or to go up to the board or do anything, I always volunteered, and I hated it. I was extremely uncomfortable. I was, especially when I first started doing that, stuttering nonstop. I couldn't get the words out. It seemed like I would lose my breath every time the teacher called on me. So there's a lot of things, but you slowly work on that repeatedly. And now I view, public speaking as a strength for me,
Oh, for sure. Yes.
So I think you really have to focus on ensuring that line of communication, or that your ability to communicate to people is in tune, because otherwise you're going to be struggling, and you're probably going to be unhappy, because there's going to be people that are communicating over you, and maybe your thoughts, opinions, and ideas are not being heard by everyone else.
Yeah, and that to me goes back to figuring out who you are first, and how you can best present yourself and communicate with other types that aren't just like you. Because it's easy for us all to think like, this is how I am. Why would anybody be any different? But that's such a narrow-minded way to think. So you have to expand your horizons. I think it's admirable that you pushed yourself at such a young age. Like, I wasn't doing that. Yeah. So I'm very happy to just be... Well, usually it's me that's behind the mic while everybody else shines, because that's just not my cup of tea. But that's okay for somebody else to be, and I can support them being that way, because that's, it's the balance. I don't want it. I'm happy to give it to someone else. Right.
So good. Well, and kind of going back now to our original discussion here about personality types. What are some strategies that you have when dealing with different personality types to make sure that you are able to get your message across? So for me, an example for me would be, knowing the differences between the personality types and being able to adapt to those.
Recognizing them, and being able to say like, oh, okay, this person seems to be, a C, for instance. Right. I'm going to have to give them facts and stick to the facts and not my big ideas.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, I think if you're able to understand where they're coming from, there's going to be a lot less frustration. And it goes back to, there's no bad personality types, there really isn't. There's just different ones that are able to, intertwine differently. Another strategy I've heard of when dealing with different personalities is, asking questions. Ask them, how do they work?
Like ask them. So I always teach this when I'm training new recruits, like ask people what's their favorite dinosaur.
Yeah.
Over this. Because when you ask people what their favorite anything is, you give validation to, one, you care what their opinion is, and two, it gets them talking about something that they're passionate about. Right. For this guy, it's dinosaurs, so that's a great question. Not everybody, it might be what's your favorite baseball team or, what's your favorite thing to cook or whatever it is. But like it gets them talking about something that they're excited about. So that's a good place to start. And you can start pulling things from that conversation that show you what their personality is and adjust accordingly. And if we're all doing that for each other, holy crap, how healthy would this world be if we were actually doing that? Well,
and I think it could be as easy as asking someone, how do you work? And we do this with our clients all the time. Are you a caller? Are you a texter? Are you more of an email guy? How often? And you covered this a little bit, like you were just saying, but just basically asking how are we going to be most effective working together, and let them tell you, especially if you're an I like me, where I can go with the flow for the most part. Unless when I'm dealing with a C, it's tough.
Yeah,
when I'm dealing with all sorts of numbers and everything else, it gets a little tough. But
what's the easiest personality type for you to deal with?
Well, another I. Yeah. Oh my God.
You guys are excited.
Oh, we are going crazy. Yeah. We're like lighting the entire building on fire and partying, and it's incredible. And then the next morning we wake up and immediately regret all the decisions we made the previous day.
We need an S to come in here and clean everything up for us.
Yeah. The C's are crying in the corner.
The D's are so disappointed.
Yeah. The D's don't even know what to do, But I think another thing that you can do is look for common goals or common agenda. Maybe someone of a different personality type is more focused, like we said, on the numbers, or maybe they're more focused on the big picture, and find those ways that you're similar, because they're not all different. We're not, it's not black and white. It's certainly some major gray area that we're working in right now with this type of stuff. And then the other one would be, picking your battles. And this one's primarily for the D's. But pick your battles. You're not going to be able to agree with everybody or at all the time, or necessarily agree with the way they do things. And not everything needs to be World War III.
No, and you don't always have to get your way.
Right. Wow. What a concept.
I know, it's very weird.
But yeah, so those are all different ways that you can work with different personality types. I always like to try and mimic them, especially and that might come easier for me as like an I. But if like we said, if we're dealing with different personality types, try to mimic their style and mimic the way that they are presenting themselves and that they are speaking. And people typically like to work with people that are similar to themselves. So I think automatically, just by maybe mirroring some of the different ways that they're speaking or acting, they're automatically going to have that subconscious, affection for you as a person. Excuse me. Well, I just said but those are all different things. And I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that, people are very complex, and if you're dealing with somebody at work and maybe they're not being very receptive to what you're saying, or they're in a bad mood, you have to remember that we're in here for 8 hours a day. But there could be a number of things that are going on in their personal life. They may be having a bad day, maybe in a bad mood, and I think you have to go in with some empathy, and you have to go in with the understanding that people aren't simple. There's a lot of factors that come into play. And I'm sure you see that with different candidates and even clients all the time, Oh
yeah. I just talked to a girl this morning, and, the entire interview I did with her was very quiet. She talked like this the whole time. And I just kept, I was being the eye trying to pull everything out.
Right.
And she's a great candidate for the role, and it's a C role. So she would be excellent for it. But yeah, you do run into that. And I think, we work with people so much in this industry that you adjust to people more than you expect people to adjust to you most of the time, because it just makes everybody's life that much easier. So like with her, okay, you need it quiet. You need just the facts. I'm going to give them to you. And we breeze through the interview. Whereas sometimes you'll talk to somebody who might be an I, for instance, who wants to tell you every little thing about everything they've ever done in their entire life. And this is how it's applicable to this one job you're trying to get for them. And you just let them go, man.
Yep.
So it's us adjusting to them and maybe that's just because that's the S in me talking that I can adjust to everybody else's stuff. But I think you adjust to them, and that's how you help them to be successful too.
Right. And I think that's important to an organization. And it goes back to our conversation with culture and how different personalities act with culture and in different work environments and different schedules. And ultimately, I know at least from a personal standpoint, we're trying to build the most well-rounded, complete company that is empathetic and is working hard to better people's lives and not only the people that we're working with for our clients, but also the people who work here at MalaceHR. I want everybody to be able to go home and to a nice house and drive a nice car and spend time with their families, go on vacations, So it's a all around approach to helping people and to creating an environment that is positive and it brings success to an organization. Anything else that you want to comment on as far as personality types?
No, I think you hit on a lot of really just the main thing to make a good culture and a collaborative culture. I actually sat in on an interview for an internal candidate to work with us on MalaceHR, and I was trying to explain things to her, and she was like, "Oh, I actually watched your podcast." I was like, "Sweet, that's amazing." But ultimately, we're trying to create a culture of collaboration, and everybody wins and everybody grows and they're successful. Unless you want to stay stagnant, then that's okay too. But trying to find a place where everybody feels like this is their home and they're safe and they're listened to and they're respected.
Right.
Because when you do reach out and you do start looking into, why are people leaving jobs? And it's because they don't feel like they have a voice, or it's not just about like, well, I don't make enough money anymore.
Right.
So if we can create a place that is a safe place for someone to land, I think that speaks volumes to how we've grown as a company and in the direction that we're headed in with inclusion and collaboration and things like that. I've worked at other staffing companies who it's very dog eat dog, and it's very, you stole my candidate, and we don't have that here.
Yeah.
And
that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible.
I would hate that.
Yeah. And so to come here and to know that like before you walk in the door, we're trying to figure out who you are as a person so that we can figure out how to communicate best with you and put you in a situation where you're going to be successful. Just because you're not an I doesn't mean you can't be a great recruiter. Just because you're not a C doesn't mean you can't be good at administrative work, but we'll find a fit for you. But it's a good start. It's a good place to start to really understand who we're dealing with and how to set them up for success.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think it's very interesting, at what people are looking for in jobs and the types of environments and personalities that they work well with. So, but I thought we had a pretty good discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I appreciate everyone listening. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and make sure to also check out and like our pages on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next time, we'll see ya.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Malace Cast, the official podcast of MalaceHR, available now on YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe now to Malace TV, available on YouTube. And we'll see you on our next Malace Cast.